There's also another 110 million which has been returned on UFB returned funds, and that has now been allocated into these rural programs as well. Currently under discussion with Crown Infrastructure Partners is also a further 100 million, which will hopefully be put towards these programs of work also. Now, under RBI2, the target is that all broadband users will have access to broadband of at least 20 megabits per second, which is considered fast broadband. At the end of that, it's somewhere around 91,000 businesses and households in rural New Zealand will have connectivity. The Mobile Black Spot Fund is about public safety, and that is about getting connectivity along rural state highways and into tourist locations. And those, we've got about 100 of those sites to complete. So the Rural Connectivity Group is an independent entity that was born out of these programs of work. We are wholly owned by Spark, Vodafone and 2degrees. They're all equal shareholders in the work. On top of the government funds, those parties have also committed $75 million of capital to go towards this. So the Rural Connectivity Group has the bulk of the work that Crown Infrastructure Partners have identified. There are also 9 wireless internet service providers who are also receiving funding, and they are upgrading their networks primarily to be able to deliver the 20 megabits per second broadband speed. You've got a fantastic operator in this area in Gisborne.net, and we will be working very closely with them, which I'll explain later as well. So, as I said, we're a fully funded entity. Our focus is to take this funding as far as possible. Our main focus is to build the infrastructure required to deliver these services. We will not be a service provider. We are just completely dedicated on building the network. Vodafone, Spark and 2degrees all have separate contracts with Crown Infrastructure Partners to deliver services from the infrastructure that we build. Crown Infrastructure Partners are very much our close partner on this. They hold the purse strings. They are also approving all of the work that we do. Our sites have been contracted already, so we are working to a program of work that they very much approve. You will recall that your council worked very hard a number of years ago working on the request for information from MBIE. The policy, what you see now as part of the RBI Phase 2 and the Mobile Black Spot funds, that information that you provided, along with all the other territorial authorities, was used to develop the policy, which is then filtered down to this program of work. Where we are going now, it is just not a commercially viable solution. The areas that we are providing connectivity to, this is a program of work for the public good to ensure that as many New Zealanders as possible have access to broadband services. The sites that we are building, we have a great deal of flexibility to be able to utilise the funding in the most effective and efficient way. However, even by managing to build at the cheapest total cost of operation, those sites will still not make money. We're talking about delivering broadband into small areas that will have maybe 10, 25 families hanging off it. So this isn't about the mobile network operators getting commercial gain. This is actually about collaboration in the industry and with government to ensure that the outcomes benefit the whole of New Zealand as much as possible. So I think it's really important for us that people are able to understand that premise, because with the unique collaboration that has happened, there's a couple of things that are a world first. First of all, we are now building infrastructure where all 3 mobile network operators in New Zealand will be sharing the same equipment. That's never actually been achieved before anywhere in the world. There are situations where 2 operators can share antennas. New Zealand's taking that further. We've got 3 operators, which has not been achieved before, sharing one set of antennas. That means the infrastructure we can build is smaller, but it's delivering 4G modern services from all networks. So whilst these people have had to wait a very long time for us to turn up, when we do turn up, they're not going to be disadvantaged by the technology that we roll out. So it's 4G with a pathway to 5G upgrade when that is widely available. Also, this is a little bit technical, but it's interesting. In order for those antennas to be shared, they're also sharing the radio access network, which is the electronic smarts, which feed the traffic back into their own core networks. So we're seeing collaboration at quite an unprecedented level here in New Zealand, which is once again for the public good. So in terms of our specific, yes, please do.
Councillor Dunn. Thank you.
Was it difficult to get those 3 parties together to share the was it argy-bargy?
So what actually
happened so slow?
What actually happened under the Rural Broadband Initiative Phase 1 was that Vodafone and Chorus had the bulk of the work there. They were contracted to build infrastructure. Under RBI 1, the towers were specified to be a minimum height. They had to take up to 24 panel antennas so that all 3 mobile network operators could have as many antennas as they wanted. At the outset of that program, there was scepticism that the program was really only benefiting one party, which was Vodafone. What actually happened through that was that there was an incredible amount of trust built. Vodafone would secure the site, they would build the tower. Spark and 2 Degrees were notified that that tower was ready. They would turn up and put their equipment on it. After they'd done 1 or 2, they realised that this was actually a pretty good model because they only had to order kit and get it installed. They didn't have to do any of the resource consenting, the site acquisition, anything. So that program of work actually built the confidence and trust in the industry. Once upon a time, getting a site for a mobile tower was like an arms race because the person who got there first had first go at the customers. It's not like that anymore. We're down to the fact that nobody's making money off these towers. It's fully funded, and it's fully funded for a reason because it's just not commercially viable.
Yeah, Caitlin, I know a couple of councillors have got questions, but would you prefer to finish your
No, I don't.
presentation
If you're
first, or?
happy, I'm happy to take questions along the way.
Right, Councillor Foster, then Councillor Dowson.
Thank you, Caitlin. There's a lot of rural communities already that have got their own providers that they've sorted out and paying accordingly to those providers. So what happens in those situations?
The government policy has been for these funds to go into areas where broadband doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist.
Doesn't
so
exist.
If people have got existing setups, that'll be status quo.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Dowson.
And that's why, excuse me, that 9 of the wireless internet service providers have been chosen to upgrade their equipment. They've been funded around about $1 million each to be able to upgrade their networks to achieve that minimum speed. So this is all about new connectivity going into areas where it doesn't already exist.
Okay, for your local providers up there, there is one provider that is not there, that's Evolution.
Evolution Networks, yeah, know about Evolution Networks. They would have had the opportunity to bid on the government proposal, but clearly they weren't successful. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Just wondering a little bit more about the shared network structure. So we've got these towers, they can take 24 panels, as you say. Is there a potential for more mobile providers to come in and attach panels to those networks, or will it always be Vodafone, Spark and 2 Degrees?
No, we're contractually bound to be able to deliver a wholesale backhaul service. So whatever backhaul we enable at each site, we actually also have to make that available to others. We also are contractually bound to have a co-location service, so Evolution Networks, FX Networks, whoever else in the whole of the industry are able to come and put their equipment, police, civil defence, council for that matter. If they have a requirement to utilise that infrastructure, it will be open.
So new providers could come into our market and utilise this infrastructure.
Yeah, it is highly unlikely that a full mobile network operator would come into the New Zealand market. It's pretty saturated, but having said that, doesn't matter if they do. The infrastructure's there to utilise.
Yeah, with the infrastructure there, it may be tempting. But the other thing I was going to ask is obviously I've worked in telecom industry before, and in this region, knowing the rural nature of it and the isolation of some of the sites that we have, there's quite a big OPEX cost in terms of massive
OPEX cost.
How is that going to be funded going forward? Because obviously we've got, you mentioned sort of 300 and something million if you're lucky, if you get this next 100 mil, but
we've got a lot of work to do because we're contractually bound to deliver at least 400 sites. With stretch targets, we would like to see that go over 500 sites. With the discussion around the further 100 million, we're potentially talking about 600 sites. They're going to be bespoke to each location, but you're right, New Zealand is inherently difficult to be able, rural New Zealand, to deliver coverage to, because you've got many valleys where people live, lots of high points, but in order for radio frequency to reach down, it actually needs to be near the people. So we need to bounce signals around to be able to
make sure
get to the end users.
And make sure no one's unscrewing your solar panels and your batteries and
that's
taking
right.
them home.
That's right. Diesel generators, exactly.
Yeah, and is that contract going to be tendered at a later date for local maintenance, or is that part of the?
We're currently in the closing stages of our request for proposal for our equipment vendors and our build partners. Certainly for ongoing OPEX, we will definitely be looking for locals to assist in the ongoing maintenance and operation. You also asked about the ongoing OPEX, what happens. So our program of work will finish in December 2022. We hope to have spent all the funds wisely by then and overachieved on our targets. From an operational perspective, yes, the OPEX is high. We have a big focus on lowest cost of operation across the life of that facility. However, if there is a shortfall, the MNOs, our shareholders, are contractually bound to step up and keep the network running. Yeah.
Do you still get tower location resistance from some people? I mean,
this under Rural Broadband 1, we achieved our targets very easily. We were surprised at the low level of negativity towards the sites. We were very careful to choose appropriate locations and also were very robust in our process, so that when we did have to defend a site, we had very good reasons about defending that site, and we worked with anybody that had concerns about that. In this set of circumstances, we're going pretty remote, and there is not a lot of affected parties because we will be at a high point in the middle of a farm. We're getting actually a lot of requests and a lot of offers of land already from people because they are so disadvantaged by not having connectivity. They're very keen to achieve it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What we are having difficulty with, and I will flag this, hope it's appropriate in your region, is that up the coast, and a lot of all of the sites that we have in your program of work currently, we've started the site acquisition process on. But we're having a lot of difficulty finding the appropriate parties to speak to if it's Māori-owned land, and getting contacts. We really do require your local knowledge. Yvette and I are having a meeting with council officers after this, and we'll be discussing specifics of hopefully how they can assist us to help us out with things like that, because we're a small, tight team running this nationwide. We really need to rely on your local knowledge and expertise in assisting us in getting this rolled out appropriately.
Okay. So is there anything else you think you might be needing from council? Or?
Well, I'm pretty sure you made some generous offers in your responses to MBIE a couple of years ago. So what we would like is assistance that I believe is achievable from a council perspective. We would like access to advice from your RMA people so that we can have proper conversations about either avoiding costly and lengthy resource consenting process and put it in a site that can still achieve the end targets but not perhaps go through such a lengthy process. We would like to work with your roading engineers about possibility of siting sites if it's possible in road reserve. We would like to work with council about infrastructure that's around, such as Evolution Networks and the work that they might be up to. We are having a lot of discussions across the industry, not so much in your area, but other areas. We're having to consider satellite backhaul, which is cripplingly expensive. But across the East Coast, we're able to actually go high point to high point because there's good visibility, but then it's getting the signal down to where those people live. So,
Okay.
yeah, we're...
Councillor Biddy? Joe, put your button there, Bill.
How many sites are you looking for in the northern
Bill?
part of the coast? Not
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, so we've got 11 sites in Gisborne, and it's probably a good chance for me to move through. That's just a little prototype of the type of infrastructure that we can build cost effectively, but you know, if it's in a high wind loading area, we can build something strong. Obviously, I'm speaking to Tairāwhiti Economic Action Plan this afternoon, but I just wanted to reiterate that our program of work is actually meeting a couple of those clauses, which is good. So the green dots on this represent the sites that we'll be building in the Gisborne region. We've got 11 in total. Below you in the Wairoa area, we've got another further sites. It's another 11 or 12 in that area. Also Hawke's Bay. Further along the coast in the Portakey and up towards Whakatane, we've got more sites as well. So those are the general areas that we will be servicing. You can see there that most of the sites have a dual purpose. They are covering off the mobile black spots, therefore we have to be able to get road coverage on the state highways in those areas. But they're also where there are population, we're providing broadband services as well. So we have started our site acquisition process on all of those areas. Gisborne is a priority area under Crown Infrastructure Partners program of work, so that's why we're actively involved. But like I say, we would welcome some assistance in maybe finding the most appropriate people to talk to for some of those sites. What that coverage will look like at the end, so sorry about this being zoomed in, but that's in the northern part. Is it? Or I'm in the southern part. Anyway, the red is new coverage that will be provided from the new towers, and the blue is current existing coverage from all mobile network operators. So you can see we're covering quite considerable terrain in those areas, filling in spots that aren't already covered across the region. And we do have targets about the number of end users we have to meet on those rural broadband towers. So we can't just place them willy-nilly. We actually have to prove that we're achieving household coverage in those rural locations.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, how do you test those sites? The northern area has always been a big black hole in terms of telecommunications.
Yes.
And without appearing to bag them, Gisnet has a few issues too.
Yes,
So
difficult terrain.
when will you know, when will you set about testing to see that there are going to be effective coverage?
So all the work that's done so far to get us to the point of having chosen those sites has been desktop analysis. It's pretty sophisticated. However, it doesn't replicate 100% what happens when you're on site. We also have to make sure that we secure the nominal site that's been identified. There's quite a bit of work that goes into that because that often doesn't actually suit the landowner, and we have to work with them to find a location that still achieves our targets but suits their operations. When the site is built, we have sophisticated drive testing equipment which goes around and actually tests the actual signal strength all the way out to the outer reaches of the footprint and then until it drops off. So yeah, as you can see by those coverage maps, we're filling in quite a vast number of gaps. Unfortunately, I know you'll probably raise this, the East Cape, I know after speaking with Yvette, is what you would consider one of your tourist hotspots. So I have raised that with Crown Infrastructure Partners as a consideration under the 100 million further extension. It's fair to say that whilst 11 are confirmed in the program, we've actually got another 7 or 8 that we would like to see brought in the Gisborne area. So if that was successful, the total number would be about 18 or 19 sites that we would end up building. But until that's all confirmed, that's only hearsay at this stage. But yeah, working with Yvette and others, we've identified other sites that we can go further.
Could you just go back to the slide before this one of the locations? Just looking at this, I mean, obviously our region has very sparse population in very difficult areas, and we probably miss your targets quite a big deal when you look across the border and you see all the inland sites being put in for our neighbours, and yet we're only really getting state highway coverage for mobile broadband. Sorry, for black spot. We're not really achieving too much rural broadband impact in there.
Half of those sites are rural broadband sites, and those are where end users are. So it's been very scientifically determined where those sites should go. And don't forget, you've got Evolution Networks, Gisborne.net. It's not our aim to overbuild those people that have already invested in networks. So there's been a lot of work go into where those end users are that don't have coverage, that will achieve coverage through this program. So it's not something that's, you know, we've just put pins on a map.
Yeah, we're getting in on time on this. Can you go through to the end of your presentation? Then I'll
Absolutely.
Yep.
So where we're at, the Rural Connectivity Group was a complete startup company. We have got a really good team on board. We're very highly experienced people across the whole of the industry, and people who are very passionate about seeing this rolled out. It's a really ambitious program. Under RBI1, we had 5 years and we built 154 brand new towers and upgraded 380 odd. We're looking at starting completely afresh and delivering over 500 sites within what is now only 4.5 years to go. So we're going to have to be pretty fast and flexible in our approach, and pretty efficient as well, because, you know, we're really all focused on making sure that every cent counts in this funding. Our engagement is underway, but we're always keen to collaborate with other parties, other networks, councils, communities. Obviously, iwi, hapu whānau, DOC is a big one for us, because a lot of the places we're going is DOC owned estate. NZTA because of the mobile black spots. So yes, we were out talking to a lot of people and getting a very good reception, and also some really good collaboration is resulting from those discussions as well.
Right. Okay.
I did notice, like the Waireka Gorge is obviously a huge priority as being a major black spot, and with the slippages and the road conditions there are vital. So I see there's one tower or one spot there. Is that enough to cover for that whole coverage of the Waireka Gorge?
Well, we'd have to have a look at the coverage maps in detail. I don't feel confident at this point in time being able to answer that question fully, but I can certainly come back via a vet to show you what coverage is through there.
Right.
Through the chair,
sorry.
there are other providers who have put bids in for parts of the gorge. And so that was one of the things that we did highlight, even though it's not within our rohe, we did highlight that it is significantly important to us to, sorry, I'll take my glass, to have some coverage through that area approved and improved. So,
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that, Caitlin. We've got a couple of formal things we've got to do before we go on to your paper, but it's probably only 10 minutes. All right, thanks a lot. Okay, we've got the minutes from the last meeting. Moved by Councillor Burdett, seconded by Councillor Foster. Any matters arising? Okay, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Anything from the action sheet?
Could we just get a progress on where we're at with Peel Street toilets at this stage?
Mr. Blair.
Through the chair. So when we took the tender out, we received no responses. So next steps was to engage with 4 suitably qualified suppliers, 3 of which came back and said they weren't interested. 1 said they were. So now we're just formalising the documentation to engage with them on a robust process to get some pricing back. 3 weeks.
Anything else on the action sheet? Councillor McLean.
Yes, can we have can I ask for an update, please, on the funding going forward of the Endeavour replicas?
Through the chair, we have looked to get funding from lotteries. However, lotteries have come back and said that replicas are not within their scope for funding. So the next step is to engage with someone like ECT to determine whether they would provide funding for the replicas. But we have not done that yet.
Is that a terminology issue? Should we be calling these public artwork instead of replicas?
Yeah.
Through the chair, we did float that with lotteries to say that it was public art, but they felt they were replicas.
All right. And we've got the governance work plan there too. Is anyone have any issues with it? Need anything clarified? Yeah.
At the government's work plan, there is a piece there for freedom camping, the freedom camping bylaw or review, and I noticed that it is in environment and planning this afternoon. So which actual committee does that sit with? Is it kind of half and half or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had a lot of discussion about whether that report, which is a noting report around the freedom camping and summer camping issues and opportunities learned from this last season. So we had a lot of discussion about whether it should come to this committee or to environment and regulatory. Given that the majority of the questions raised are around monitoring and enforcement, it was deemed that that was a better place for the report to go to. That's slightly separate to the discussion around the bylaw, which will come up at a later date. But we didn't want to duplicate reports going to both committees.
So in saying that, the bylaw review will come via this committee?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Dowsing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might be absolutely crazy, but the last item on
Could
that Community Development and Services Governance Work Plan is a quarterly integrated report, and it's only 3 times a year.
It's a leap year.
I think we may be missing a quarterly report there, that's all, just because of the timing of the others.
Triennial or triennial, depending on the interpretation of both of them. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot. Okay, we'll move on to the report on the rural connectivity, which is page 52. And it is just a noting report, but Yvette's here if you want any questions. Yep. Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Dowsing. No questions, updates? All right, I think it was well covered by Caitlin, so thanks very much for that. It looks like there's nothing further from it, so all those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, back to page 36, which is the Belfry Tower. We've just got the adjourned paper plus the updated. Moved by Councillor Foster, second by Councillor Wharehinga. Yep.
Do you think that we should take both of these papers together, because they're one's about the Belfry Tower and the other one's around the costings?
Yep.
I did hear
The costings isn't updated, the first paper which was left to lie on the table.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Just a wording from, sorry. No. Take them separate. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for that advice, Heather. Okay, so go back to the first one. So the movers and seconders are actually moving the first paper. That's okay. All those in favour or anything? Yeah. Against? Carried.
I'm happy to move the second.
And the second, moved by Councillor Wharehinga and seconded by Councillor Dowsing. I just thought the wording could be up to 8,000 instead of 8,000, because there could be opportunities to be a little bit less on some of those items I've seen.
As a
contingency there in that. So
as a mover of the paper, I'm happy for that adjustment for the wording of that for the recommendation.
okay,
the support of the second.
Yep. Okay, if there's nothing further, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Page 39, a review of the public places and reserves bylaws. Yep.
I mean, the bylaws we have only been in place for 3 years, and they operate on a 10-year cycle. It is a little bit vague around the reasoning for the requirement, except that there may be an outcome that the public aren't receiving, but there may always be an outcome that the public aren't receiving regardless of how often you do this. So my question was more around, we have a big work program of bylaws to do that are actually due, and these aren't due for another 7 years. Are these the highest priority, and are these the best place to be putting our workload? Because in my opinion, if they're only 3 years old, they should be fairly current anyway.
You're going to handle it, yeah.
Through the chair, in 2015 we had the bylaw elapsed, and we put through the bylaw with just some very minor changes. So you could actually say in principle that the bylaw wasn't reviewed in full the last time it was done. So it is actually very antiquated in parts. So that would be my response to that. Yeah, that's the truth.
It's just a question. So is this an opportunity to expand some of the bylaws into other different areas? I mean, like on our riverbanks. I just mentioned this because, like, even just down here, most Thursdays we have a party on our riverbank, which is not a good look. Just down here, if you go on a Thursday morning, you'll see there's a whole lot of people congregating on our riverbank, drinking and excessively, and apparently our City Watch people haven't got the jurisdiction to go and do anything or anything. So is this about expanding, possibility of expanding some of our bylaws to cover areas of concern like that?
So through the chair, that particular activity is under the alcohol control bylaw, which is a separate thing. However, obviously, we're trying to take an integrated approach to how we do our policy and planning. So in any issues that pop up through that, we can look at how we might be able to amend other things. We're trying to take an actual policy approach to this. So we're trying to start from first principles. What does the community facilities strategy say about the role of our public places? What does our community say about what they want these places to be used for? And then we'll design the tools around that rather than saying, let's just change the bylaw. We want to be smart about it.
Yeah.
So there may be a number of bylaws and instruments that might change as a result of this review. So yeah, it's all up for grabs.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor?
Is this going to help us with our freedom camping? Opening up other areas for freedom camping as well, because there's connectivity to that. Thinking of coastal reserves particularly, does that fall under this reserves bylaw? It does, doesn't it?
That's through the chair. That's quite a tricky question. The freedom camping bylaw is obviously really contentious. The councillors have noted that already. We've had 3 cracks in the last 5 years. If there were issues that did pop up, we would look at it as part of that. I just do need to state that the central government is doing quite a bit of work in the freedom camping space at the moment. As soon as the new government came in, they had quite a few meetings with officials and with elected representatives about what issues they're facing. And I know that the Gisborne District Council has been represented at those meetings. So there is potentially some change coming in that area that we are trying to keep abreast of. It hasn't been mooted yet. However, we will try and make sure that we don't charge too far ahead with that and then have to readjust our position again in response to a central government directive.
Yeah, that's quite right. I mean, the difficulty with the freedom camping on the reserves bylaw is we've got a central government law that sits over the top of it, and that's what's made everything so difficult. Yeah.
So my original question was also, does our coastal reserves fall under the reserves bylaw? That's here.
Through the chair.
No.
Yes. Just to clarify, there are reserve management plans that talk about the level of development and the purpose and function of those reserves. What the reserves bylaw does is it regulates the behaviour of people within those reserves and gives some enforcement powers. So that's how those two tools sit together.
Okay. Councillor Dowson?
Just one more thing. It was mentioned that that there's not a lot of cost implication to this, so it's only internal time. What sort of scope, what sort of time frame is this review delivered over?
So we're looking at a what I would call a slow burn on this. There are a number of issues to be teased out. The one that we're thinking might generate the most issue might be around scattering of ashes. That's likely to be quite a contentious issue for people. So there's going to be some engagement that's going to have to happen along the way. And we're not envisaging having this completed until I think it's March 2019. So this will be a slow process. So the staff will do this as well as other projects.
Okay, nothing further? We've had a mover and a second, have we? Yep. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Should we have a little bit early cup of coffee or? Yep. Okay, turn for a cup.
This one, Andy, I think it was just opening it up for discussion about whether there was anything the committee would like.
Work plan discussion. Yep. Okay.
In the governance work program. Anything that's really pressing that's not in there.
All right. Okay, so we're on to page 44. It's the governance work plan. So we're sort of really having a look at that and seeing if you think there's anything omitted from that or anything you'd like added in there or anything. So. Yeah, we'll have an observation.
The whole governance plan is all about the city and its immediate surrounds. I make the point again, as I have done regularly, we are a district council and there are needs up there in the rural sector as much as there is in the city. So, you know, no disrespect to the ones that put it together. But hey, when we go to our long-term plan meetings, there are a number of issues that are brought up and they are repeatedly articulated at annual plan meetings. I would have liked to have seen some of that put in here.
Is there anything specific you can think of at this stage?
Well, there's all sorts of things that in the different communities we're in, who's responsible in terms of the redevelopment of some of those wharves or the updating in terms of where the information is. There's toilets, there's all sorts of things that are put on the table in front of us and we say, yeah, we'll attend to that. But I don't know. I just question. Apart from the update for the plans for those community upgrades, there's very little to look at here. Services to the rural sector.
Through the chair, I think that's a fair point, and there have been quite a lot of matters that have been raised through the community meetings within the livable communities space, and they will be discussed through the LTP deliberations, and council make some decisions to look further into them or fund some of those requests. It may be that after the LTP deliberations, this committee may be clearer about the items that it does want further report backs on in terms of the rural communities and potentially within the city as well. But the purpose of this report at this time, and perhaps it's preemptive before the LTP is determined, but the purpose of this was really if there was anything pressing on councillors' minds on this committee that is not included in this governance work program as it is now, an opportunity for the councillors to have a discussion about it and pull those items into the governance work program so that we can start working on them over the next year.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
I'd like to see included in here an annual reporting from Heart of Gisborne, and even possibly twice a year. And also, we used to have Tourism Eastland come along and do a presentation to us about what's happening with tourism. We don't have any of that information anymore coming through, and I think it's really vital for this committee. Heart of Gisborne's funded by a targeted rate, so silly management. There's a lot of positive stuff happening in there. A few of us are involved with it, and it would be great to have the community at whole understand what's going on. Yeah. And the same with tourism. I mean, we don't know what's happening with, we don't get a lot of information coming through. I mean, I hear that I know there's some really good work being done behind the scenes, but it's a good opportunity to be able to bring it in front of the public, media here and everything on full view of our internet.
So we're always accepting of those organisations coming to us, but you're saying you'd like to see something more formal put in place for it because they can request to come here at any time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think if it was actually put on our agenda, well, then we know it's coming up, and whether it's a once-a-year report or an annual report.
Tourism Eastland and Heart of Gisborne. Activate Te sorry.
Yep,
Councillor Dunn.
My comment more is around giving this more of a governance emphasis. There's a lot of stuff in here that's already underway. This is more directed at us as a group of governors, is that we should probably get together beforehand and talk about stuff that we want as governors going forward that is nowhere on here. But it's something we could have done as a group before this plan comes out. Because there's a lot of stuff in there that's already underway. It's not really governance, it's just, monitoring progress, which we need to do, which is good. But it would be nice if we got together before and talked about any big plans that we'd like to see, or there's something going
It does
forward.
indicate our decision points, though. That's the main point of it. Councillor Dowson.
To follow up on Councillor Dunn's note, I see that in a later appendix, there's the Lloyd George Road rezoning plan change, and I guess that to add on to what Councillor Dunn was saying, it would be interesting to indicate that it would be that seeing what might happen around Awapuni Road in rezoning, which is a conversation that council's had many times. I think as a desire to see what that would look like. I guess that's as valid as Lloyd George Road rezoning, but I've never seen it indicated in a council paper. Yeah, but I think that's the thing that it's something that we want to investigate in the future as a governance item. We should be bringing those things forward if we want to see it.
Anything else?
Through the chair. If I can just clarify that the highlighted items on that spreadsheet are the ones that will come through community development, not the plan change. Apologies.
Yeah. All right, do we have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Burdett, seconded by Councillor McLean. Nothing further? There's nothing you thought that might?
Through the chair, just referring back to Councillor Dunn's question, whether there is a step in this where the committee can get together and have dialogue about the proper dialogue about things that could go into the governance work program rather than through a committee discussion like this.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, what we'd do is, knowing that this was coming to us, we'd probably have a meeting together beforehand and then talk about whether there's any big things that we want to see going forward. It's just a matter of focusing on governance and future strategic thinking, not stuff that's already in. But that's for us to, maybe next year that this governance plan comes around, we'll do it before that one. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Strategic Plan and Governance Work Programme, page 48. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to page 50, Appendix 1. Policy for psychoactive substances. Is this something that we should even be starting, considering the whole psychoactive substances kaupapa has been pulled off the national agenda? I'd be very worried if it was. Yeah, that it's still there. From a local government, from a community point of view, because there was massive backlash from our community in regards to psychoactive substances. So I'm just querying why that's on the on our work program.
So through the chair, it's a policy. It's actually called a local approved products policy, and it's about the location that you're allowed to have to sell psychoactive substances from. So we have an existing one, and there's a requirement for us to review it within 3 years of it being made operative. And so this is when the review date for that one comes. So it's essentially really similar to the gambling venues and local alcohol policy ones that we it's undertaking our responsibilities around the bits that council can control from a regulatory perspective, which is around the locations.
Supplementary. I understand what the original paper was for, and I do understand the need for us to review those papers. I'm just questioning whether or not we need to even be reviewing something that from a central government point of view has been actually taken off the table. I'm wondering what kind of message we're sending to our communities if we have a policy for psychoactive substances when on a national central government scale, psychoactive substances has actually been removed entirely from their table. That's my concern in regards to this. I guess what I'm saying is, should we take it? I'm questioning the necessity to have it there. That's what I'm asking.
We'll come back to you at the next meeting, actually, and just clarify a few points around central government's direction on it.
Okay. Yeah, I hear what Councillor Whare is saying, because I mean, at the stage where it first got put in there, I mean, these substances were actually legal, but you know, it's been surpassed by the fact that they're illegal now. So whether it needs to be there or not.
Sorry, just one other thing in regards to that. When through the chair, when you come back with the policy in relation to that, could it be something that's kind of forward-thinking with the current government's direction in mind regarding other substances that may or may not be coming up for legislation, or all of those kinds of things? So could it be kind of, because I do understand that the psychoactive substances was our response to something that central government were pushing through really quite rapidly. If it could have some kind of forward-thinking thing in regards to the current or central government's direction, then that'll be good. I'd like for us to be on the front foot in regards to some of these things, so that we're not in a reactionary period like we were with the psychoactive substances stuff.
So through the chair, we would like to come back to you at the next meeting with a proposal, just to give you a heads up now that we are wanting to suggest that we have a few more targeted workshops where the staff can actually present on papers, not because there's someone asking us for a response on it, but because it's an issue that's important to our community. So we'll bring a paper back next time that talks about it. It's kind of like we called it Tell Me Something I Don't Know. Which is so that this committee can remain over a range of issues that affect your deliverables and your mandate. Yeah. The other one was, but those councillors may like the title "I've Been Thinking."
Okay, it's just a noting report. Is there anything further? Councillor Dowsing, second of Councillor Foster.
Thanks.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, that's all the public included we have got some public excluded minutes to pass. Moved by Councillor Foster, second by Councillor McLean. All those in favour? Against? Carried. That's us, is it? Nothing, no discussion after the meeting? All right. Done and dusted. Well done. Thanks.